I used all these palettes and now everybody wants to know, what did I think about them? Well, today we're going to talk about the palettes that I used in September and ranking them from my least favorite to my most favorite. So let's get started. Now, I will tell you, I thought I had filmed this video and then I realized I had not filmed this video, and luckily I had made a list of all the palettes and I didn't have to try to rank them a second time because it may have been a little bit harder. But I'm gonna start at number 15, and I'll say all of these palettes are good palettes. I like all of them, and this ranking is based on my preference, my color stories, price tag is included in that. So it really just goes based on what I think of the palettes. So just because I rank a palette lower than you would doesn't necessarily mean that I hate it, doesn't mean that it's a bad palette. It just means for this month, this was where I put that palette compared to the other palettes that I used. So I'm gonna start off at number 15 with ColourPop's Hocus Pocus Gather Round Sisters. And like I said, this isn't a bad palette. I do enjoy it. It does have some really pretty colors, but this is the third Halloween I've had this palette, and you can kind of tell it's getting a little bit more dry than some of my other palettes, which is the main reason why I ranked it as low as I did. Next, coming in at number 14 is Nomad Cosmetics American Parks, and this is a gorgeous palette. I really do like the colors in this palette, and I need to use this palette a little bit more because I mean it is absolutely gorgeous, but this is not really my color story. I mean, you can see like those are, is it focusing? I hope. I think so. They're gorgeous colors, they're really pretty, but my color story is more pinks and purples and blues and that type of stuff. And this palette, while it is far from being neutral, it is just a little too neutral leaning for it to be high up on my ranking. But I can definitely see myself using this palette many more times to come. At number 13, this may surprise some of you, and this is strictly based on price point, but that is the Danessa Myricks Lightworks 3, and I do really enjoy this palette. It's got some gorgeous colors. When I first got it, this color right here was always in my inner corner because it is so pretty. Like, I really hope she'll make this color a single shadow so that I can buy just it for when I run out, because I would always use it as a inner corner highlight. But the problem is it has these 4 shadows down the center, and they're gorgeous. I do use them as colored highlight, but you're basically talking about 10 shadows for $125. And I know there's several like multi-chromes and stuff like that in here, but there is a pressed glitter in here, and that's just kind of disappointing. So I will definitely use this palette. I will probably pan pretty much every color, if not every color in this palette, but for $125, it's just not really my like going to pull it out and use it for every look palette. Okay, at number 12 is Natasha Denona Jubilee, and this color story is very pretty. I really had a lot of fun playing with this color story. The thing is with this color story, I'm not going to make a complete look. I'm going to pull out another one of my Natasha Denona palettes to make a complete look. So while I do enjoy this palette, because I also reach into other palettes to make a complete look, that's one reason why it ranked a little bit lower. And I don't know if this is because of it's one of the palettes that came from BoxyCharm. I just feel like the cream, like the shimmer shadows, are very dry, which is kind of disappointing because I haven't had that palette for very long. Now at number 11 is Natasha Denona Mini Crush, and this one did get a little bit higher than Jubilee because I could make several complete looks with just this palette. This palette is my color story. Pinks and definitely burgundies are my color story, so I do really enjoy them, but I guess I like bigger palettes than some people do, and I don't really love the 5-pan palettes unless I'm going to pair them with something else. Now, this next palette is a 5-pan palette. I did wear it several times this month, and I did pair it with something else every time, but it is a palette that I constantly go to, and that is the ColourPop Melt For You. And again, it is that pink color story that is absolutely my color story, and a color story that I would wear every day. It's, you know, pinks are my favorite colors, so being a pink color story is absolutely my favorite. Next, at number 9 is ColourPop Blow and Smoke, and I really enjoy using this palette to deepen up looks. My daughters would use this palette every single day just as by itself because they love black eyeshadow, but I'm not a just like chrome or black colored eyeshadow girl for every single day, but I do love grabbing this palette for either deepening up a look, using the white in the inner corner. I really enjoy it for that type of things, and I find it to be a great companion palette. So if you are looking for a companion palette for deepening up or lightening colors, I definitely would recommend the ColourPop Blow and Smoke. I think that's the name of it now. I've had this palette for a few years, and I've had this palette for longer than I've had the Gather Round Sisters, and the shimmers are still a lot creamier than the Gather Round Sisters, which is one reason why it ranked as low as it did. Next, at number 8, it is another ColourPop palette, and a palette that I did use quite a bit this month, and that is ColourPop's Nightmare Before Christmas. I had a lot of fun playing with this palette. I love the hot pinks in this palette. They're so pretty. Then mixed in with this black down here with the glitter that's in it. It's just absolutely gorgeous. This palette I think is from last year, or at least I got it last year, but I think it's so gorgeous, and it will probably be a palette that I will continue to use. I mean, now that I've actually dug into it probably a good bit, because I love the hot pink with the black. Coming in at number 7 is one of a lot of people's favorites, and it probably is my, if not my very top, one of my top rainbow palettes, and that is Blend Bunny Blends. And whenever I need a color from the rainbow, I will usually go for this palette, or I will go after one of my monochromatic palettes from ColourPop. But I do really enjoy this palette for pulling certain colors from the rainbow to go with. And again, this is one of those palettes that I don't use it by itself. I always use it as a companion palette. And you know, that's one thing that keeps it a little bit lower, is I use it with other stuff more than I use it by itself. Now we are getting on up, and coming in at number 6 is Jaclyn Hill and Strawberry Fields, and I really enjoy this color story. Like I said before, reds and burgundies are, pinks and burgundies are my color story. And I feel like this is just one of those color stories and one of those palettes that I will use a lot all through the winter because of the colors that it is, and it being the color story that it is, because I do use a lot of pink and burgundies throughout the winter. Now we are making it into the top 5. I will tell you, this is where it really, really got hard, because I do really, and the Jaclyn Hill palette almost made it into the top 5. But I really enjoy and love these next 5 palettes. Any of them really could go as number 1. If you haven't tried the frozen coffee from Dunkin' Donuts with pumpkin spice, get it. It is my favorite. Now that my throat is wet, let's keep talking. Okay, coming in at number 5 is probably my top favorite brand, and that is Adept Cosmetics and Heather Austin. I have loved this palette. I have had so much fun playing with this palette. I cannot wait to continue playing with this palette. It is just so much fun. The shimmers are so buttery, and I mean, I can use this palette alone by itself, make a gorgeous look, be happy with it, or I can pair it with another palette and come up with something even more beautiful. So it's one of those palettes that I just absolutely love. Now coming in at number 4 is my other favorite brand, and it's between these two brands. I can't ever decide. And that is Glam Light, and this is the Frosted Flakes palette. I have had so much fun playing with this palette. Most of the times when I make a look, people are like, hey, did you make an auburn look? Because that looks really good. Because my husband is an auburn fan, and I do a lot of auburn themed makeup in the fall. So I've really enjoyed, just making different looks with this palette. I think I've used about every color in this palette. There are a few colors that I haven't used, but I really enjoy this palette, and just the color story of it's gorgeous. If it wasn't for the color story, I probably wouldn't have bought it because I don't care anything about Frosted Flakes. Okay. Now coming in at number 3 is another ColourPop palette. That is ColourPop and Or Kid You Not. And this is another to go along with my pinks and burgundies would be purples. And I love this color story. It's so pretty, so much fun, and it's just been so much fun to use for starting off the fall. I can see this being a palette that I will use a lot more as well. Okay, now at number 2, and I'll tell you, this was very hard between number 1 and number 2. And number 1 got it because it's a larger palette and I have more options than number 2. But I love both of these palettes so much and use them so much. But coming in at number 2 is Adept Cosmetics and House of Elle, and this palette is it's gorgeous. I mean, look at those shimmers, and I don't have to pair this palette with another palette to be able to make a gorgeous look. I mean, it's gorgeous, and it makes such pretty look that I could not imagine not having this palette in my collection, because I mean, you see those, the third one didn't really swatch much color, but it's so pretty. And I mean, I've made so many gorgeous looks with this palette, and I'm so glad I have it in my collection. I almost didn't buy it because I've kind of been on a little of I don't want to say no buy, but like sporadic buy this year. So I haven't bought as many palettes as I would have liked to, but this was definitely one of those palettes that I had to have in my collection, and I'm so glad I have it. And last but definitely not least, coming in at first place is Adept Cosmetics and Nimrod. And I mean, the colors in this palette are absolutely gorgeous. Again, it has my color stories, the blues, the purples, the pinks, which is really why this palette ends up coming in first. I can use the neutral colors and make a gorgeous look, or I can pair it with another palette and make a gorgeous look. I absolutely love using the mattes from another palette and then pulling like the blues or the purple or the pinks from this palette to do my shimmers and finishing off the look. That is probably my favorite way to use this palette. But again, I'm so glad I have it. It is probably going to be my number 2 palette of 2022. And my number 1 palette will probably be an Adept Cosmetics palette. But I mean, I just love this palette. I love the colors. I love, the looks that I've made with it. It's been so much fun. And yeah, so these were my palettes that I used in the month of September. If you like this video, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell beside it so you don't miss any of my future uploads. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye, guys.